Welcome to Mudit Verma's Furthermore podcast. You do not want to miss this. I am with the awesome comedian and actor Mahesh Kotagi. I first discovered Mahesh on a pharmacy podcast with Dr. Tony Guerra. I believe it was 2018 when I first heard the podcast. So Mahesh, how are you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on here, dude. Appreciate it.
Definitely. I'm really excited to have you on. Your podcast with Dr. Tony Guerra, that was a key kind of spark for my start for like comedy.
I'm sorry, man. This is a shitty business. Sorry. Am I allowed to curse on this? What's the deal?
Yeah, it's totally fine. And maybe I'm just like really new or young in the game, just because I don't know. So far, I'm having a good time.
No, I'm just joking. No, it's great, dude. It's been an interesting year for comedy with COVID and all, but that's cool, man. Oh, so that's how you? Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Well, so it was two things. Like, I think your podcast with Dr. Guerra, like, sparked the inkling for me to try comedy. And then I think coincidentally, I have a friend that I've known for a decade that was like secretly doing comedy, like relative to our friend circle, like a non-comedy friend circle. And then he sort of like came out to us as a comedian and invited us to his like shows, his mics and shows.
Okay.
And then I was like this audience member for like just watching these shows. And then summer of 2019, summer of last year, my first open mic was at this particular friend's spot. So.
Oh, nice.
So
man.
Yeah.
That's cool. How you been liking it during COVID? It's such a weird time to be doing stand-up right now, man. Like no live shows. Yeah. Honestly, I like Zoom. We can get into it later, but I'm enjoying the Zoom shows, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, let's talk about that now, because I've been enjoying it mainly for the networking, like just hopping on different time zones.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Right. And I was only before March, when things got real with the lockdown, that was only like 7 months in for me.
Okay.
For comedy. And all the only comedians I knew were, for me, local comics in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I took a short trip to Philly, but that was it.
Okay. So now you're getting to meet a ton more people through just new shows and stuff. Yeah, that's because it's like you're at a good place to be in it, but it's also tough because like a lot of those first years is just all like getting to know people and this and that. But in a way, you're getting to know like people from all over, which is like actually better because I don't think I met people. Well, I started in Texas, and then I moved like a year and a half into New Jersey, and then I started networking. But yeah, the earlier years, it's like just everyone. It's cool because everyone you start with is like the people that you're gonna be with like throughout your like comedy career or whatever for the most part. So
right,
but it's been fun, man. It's like I feel like there's no stakes. Like Zoom shows are so low stakes, and it's just like we're just all trying to make people laugh. It's the first time. So I've been doing it for about 10 years now. Actually, this year was a 10-year mark.
Oh, nice.
And this is the first time, and this is gonna sound bad. First time in a long time that like it's just been purely fun.
Huh.
Like, if that makes sense. Like this is like it reminds me of why I got into stand-up, because like the further you get along in it, then it's like all these other pressures of like I got to get representation, I got to get on this show, I got to get a late night set, I got like there's so much other like bullshit that comes along, but like
I see.
It's supposed to just to be fun. Like that's all that matters. Who cares like about all that other stuff? And now I'm like, oh yeah, this is like fun. Like it's just supposed to be fun. Like not that I haven't had fun, but it's like it's another level of
gotcha.
Fun. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I think I can, on one hand, I can't relate just because I'm only like a year and a couple months in, but on the other hand, like the closest thing that comes to my mind is soccer. I've been playing soccer since like late middle school and coming up on a decade. And what you're describing, like, because I wanted to like play college soccer, but my parents, I guess the schools that I could have played for would have been really small and just like not prestigious and whatnot. So that didn't work out. So there's this like, I don't know. I was like grinding, but then there was a point where I lost the love of the game. But then it came back when I would just like have fun with it. So that I can see those parallels.
Oh, cool. Yeah, man. I think that's the end of the day. As long as you're having fun, like who cares? Mm-hmm. It's just like, that's what it's supposed to be, fun for the audience and for us. But I think sometimes we just like lose sight of that. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't book this thing, or I didn't book this show, but it's like, it's just all fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, something that I'm very much struggling with is as I mentioned earlier, before the show, like I'm hunting for day jobs. We both went to pharmacy school. My pharmacy school experience was very, very rough. It was very turbulent. I graduated on time. I even got an office job, a day job, and I held it down for a year before it moved from Maryland to Florida. But I think I'm really struggling. I've like, there's so many questions there, but I think that the biggest one is like, there's a part of me that would like to dive deeply into comedy, but there's a more reasonable part of me that knows that, the way this goes, it's a marathon, and you've got to hold down a day job and pay the bills. And this adulting thing is something I'm really struggling with. So could you just like kind of speak to that and like balance and yeah, all that stuff?
No, I mean, dude, I don't feel like you're alone in that, because I'm still struggling with that myself. Okay. There is like that feeling of like, and people do it. I think you got to do whatever's best for you, because some people will like be like, screw it, I'm quitting my day job, I'm gonna move to New York or LA, and all I'm gonna do is stand up, and that works out for them. And then some people, it's like, for me, I've been working, like I still have a day job, especially right now with COVID, I think if you can get a day job and maintain it, like right now, it's like, it's dope to have that, just because everything's like, who knows when things are going to open back up and all that. But a good buddy of mine that's like been my mentor and like one of my best friends in comedy, he always told me, he's like, a lot of comics look at having a day job as like, it's preventing me from going forward and doing this full time and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But dude, you got to pay the bills.
Right.
You gotta pay your bills. And like, what happens is once you're full time into comedy, it's a whole nother level of stress that comes along with it. Because if you're, it's like, now my entire existence depends on booking this show, and like, I gotta buy food, I gotta pay rent, I gotta do this. Now it's like, there's so much extra additional pressure to the stand up and that game, that like, it's already stressful as is. So if you can at least have the job, and plus, like, if you have a day job, you can pay for like headshots, and you can pay for things like that. And look, I started featuring like last year, and like before COVID, and like feature acts, you only get paid $100 for the show, right? And like, if you're lucky, you're with a cool headliner, you stay at the comedy condo, or that's a shit show in and of itself, the comedy condos. But they might put you up in a hotel, you crash with your friend or whatever, but you get paid $100 per show, for featuring, for doing 20 minutes, right? And then you got to pay for food. Usually the headliner will take care of that, but you got to pay for hotel, flights, whatever. And it's like, you lose money and that's like a couple of years, right? Until you headline. I mean, if you're hosting on the weekends, you get paid a lot, but I think it's like, it's great to have a day job and like be able to still do this. Cause when I was working, like it was one of the worst jobs I had, but I was working at this place. I won't name it where it was, but I was working shortly after graduating from school, and like I was putting in 12 hours at the job, and then I was living in Jersey. I was taking the train into Manhattan every night to do mics and stuff. I was coming home at like 2 a.m. because I lived an hour away, but I was like, it was fine, because I think what it did for me is the hours I was working, I really couldn't focus on the comedy. So the hours I wasn't working, I felt like I was a lot more productive with the writing of the jokes, and I was able to like just focus. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't think it's a bad thing, man. I think it's because some people will be like, "Oh, you're still working, you don't care about." I was like, "No, dude, you're just trying to survive." And like, no, I think it's fine to do it, but it's up to each person, right? Because I mean, you might be like, "Screw it, I'm quitting. I'm gonna move to LA and I'm gonna just only focus on comedy," and you could be the next like huge thing, next month. Like with this business, you never know. So
right.
I don't think I answered the question.
No, I think you totally answered it, and it was so I mean, it was something I've really needed to hear. what I'm struggling with is, I mean, I'm getting better with sort of reformatting my resume, and when I land an interview, kind of presenting the best version of myself using the STAR method, the classic interview things. I guess I don't know. I have friends that are able to kind of pull off in whatever they're doing, whatever art form, they're able to kind of pull off sort of what you're describing, where they're in a they're holding down a day job, they're paying the bills, they're living independently, and they're like excelling, at their art form. And for me, that's just been a struggle. I feel like I have to be devoted to sort of one thing to really excel at it and just, I don't know, be focused. So I guess that's just something I've got to work through.
No, and I mean, I'll tell you this too, is like, and this is like, I kind of learned it the hard way is, I mean, you can't really compare what you're doing to what anybody else is doing, because like everybody has their own like path in this business, and it's like entertainment's already tough enough, stand-up's hard enough, like and it's like as comics, I think we're usually tougher on ourselves than most people are, and like if you can just stop, it's really hard to say because I'm still struggling with it myself, stop worrying what other people are doing and just focus on your own thing. And like the more you can just be like, compare yourself to yourself, like, okay, like 8 months ago, like you hadn't done a spot, right? You hadn't gone on stage a year ago, but now you've been doing it. Now you're doing a festival. Now you're doing the, a first long set. It's like, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Cause like my buddy told me, he was like, one of my friends had just gone on a TV show, and I was like, dude, that's amazing. Like, that's so cool. We got on a TV show. And he's like, well, the problem is now he's like, I'm looking at my other friends that are like, well, that dude just booked a movie. And so it's like the comparison thing will never end. And like, so the faster you can just get to be like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, this is where I'm at right now, but this is better than where I was like 6 months ago. Like the faster you can do that, like the better off you'll be overall. And like, I'm still trying to do that, and everybody has a different, like some people get huge in like a month. Some people take like 30 years, but it's like, it is what it is. It's weird because it's not like, coming from the pharmacy background is like, we have like such a structured, like, all right, you got to do good in school. You got to get this score on the PCAT. You got to apply. You have to have these things. And then you're in pharmacy school. And then now you're a pharmacist. There's no roadmap for this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
No, like, and that's the hardest part about it. I think for people like us coming from that kind of a rigid structure, to have no structure and no guarantee of what's going to happen is kind of crazy. But that's also the cool thing about it, like, you don't know, like tomorrow, like you could be like, anybody could be like famous. You could sell a TV show. You could do this. And I think the key is just sticking with it. That's the hard part.
Okay. Gotcha. Definitely. I think, it's just grappling with the notion of doing what you're passionate about, but reconciling that with just, the bills and like addressing the stress that might come with just being a full-time comic. Definitely.
Eventually you'll make the money from doing comedy. It just, there's no timeline really when it happens, but eventually, if you like it enough, like that's that cliche, like, oh, if you like it enough, you'll make money. It's like, you just got to stick with it is all it is,
Right. What would you say was your first turning point of like, maybe from open mic to first showcase or from showcase to, I don't know, headliner? And could you kind of talk about those?
I mean, the first, there wasn't really like a show or anything like that I did that was like, I was like, oh, this is it. But I will say, like the first year of doing mics and stuff like that, just like learning, still trying to figure out like how to structure a joke and things like that, was always tough. And then moving to because I started in Austin, then moved to Jersey. I was in Jersey for like a year and a half. And then I came to New York, and then I was like, there's like this whole like weird thing. Cause then you start booking shows here and there, like bar shows. And then there's like bigger names on the bill. And then you're like, oh, this is weird. Like now it's like, these are people that have been doing it for years. But I think for me, the first time was when somebody that had been doing stand-up for a while was like, hey man, that's a great joke. I was like, oh shit. Oh, so I'm doing this? Right. Oh, I can write a joke. And then I think you just need that one little like, hey man, you're doing good, to like get like, okay, cool, I'm on the right track. And then it's like, from there, it's just like, all right, this is it. Like, this is what I'm doing now,
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, that's always fun. I think when another comedian, especially somebody that's been doing it long, it's like, oh, that's a cool joke or a good job or something like that. You just need that validation because it's. I think all of us we just want that from our peers, right? Like we're all in the same spot. We're all trying to get laughs. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Could you talk about your acting life? Is how much overlap is there with your stand-up life? Is there a little overlap, a lot, or not at all? Like how would you describe that?
I think the stand-up helps us stand out in the acting world, like especially with casting directors and people like that. They're like, oh, this person's coming from the stand-up world. They're funny, like they can do comedy and things like that. And when I first started it, before I was doing classes and stuff like that a few years ago, I was like, oh, this is stand-up. I can be funny, but the being funny on camera with this script that you didn't write is very different than being funny on stage with jokes that you wrote, and it's a very different medium, right? So I think that was like the big turning point for me when I was like, oh, this is a different skill set, and the people that are like really good actors are amazing at it. But I think for us, the thing that sets us apart is we understand the timing.
Okay.
Like, we get that,
right?
Which is very hard to learn as an actor if you haven't done stand-up. So we have a big advantage. Like we have a huge advantage for any comedy scripts, but the hard part is like the nuances of the acting and understanding the character and all that. But and everyone says it. I think it is. It's not a difficult transition coming from stand-up into acting, but it's difficult because you got to learn all the acting stuff that we don't know. Right. But when it comes to a funny script and we're like, okay, like I know what to say here, I know what to do now. It's like. It's actually a pretty smooth transition into the world, and like they're all, especially commercials right now, all they want is like either improv or stand-ups, like because they just want you to be funny to sell the product, right? So
right. And did that have implications on sort of determining whether you'd reside in LA versus New York City?
Yeah, I'll say this: it did before COVID, but now it doesn't matter. Because like every single audition I'm getting now is over Zoom. Everything is like remote, and like I've heard like from people, it's like casting directors aren't going to want to see you in person for at least for a year or two. For them, it's like they got like 200 people coming into a room that they're in like a 10-foot square room. Like they don't want to do that.
Gotcha.
And honestly, it doesn't matter. Like I think for stand-up. In New York, I think New York is better. I've lived in LA and New York. I think for stand-up, New York is better just because you can get on stage so many times in a night. Like you can get on stage like 10 times a night, easy. LA, if you can get on stage twice in a night, like you're killing it. Like you're doing amazing.
Oh, okay.
It's just because it's so spread out, right? Like just to drive from one place to another, you just can't do it. Here, you just walk from club to club. And you can just hop around, right? Acting, obviously, like LA is like that's the place to be. Like that's where all the studios are. But Netflix is all over now. Atlanta's a huge acting hub. Austin's growing. Like New York's always filming. Actually, New York right now for acting is the only place that has the most like shows that are like greenlit right now. Just because New York had kind of controlled the COVID stuff. Like LA's opening up stuff. And then like a PA will get it or like somebody will get it and now they have to shut down. So
I see. Okay.
It doesn't matter, man. You could literally be anywhere in the country right now and you can work, like you can be a working actor. So, which I guess that's the good thing right nowadays.
Right. And yeah, going back to Zoom comedy, I really like it because I'm still working on like writing and I think Zoom, whereas like traditional stand-up, it's this visceral thing. You're on stage and you can really experience the physical presence of everybody. With Zoom, it's like this nice, in my opinion, like a nice intermediary, I guess, before getting on a physical stage where I'm focused more so on the words as like a developing comedian.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, because it's like with Zoom, it's like you're not in the same room as the people. You don't have that energy. There's a total different energy for doing live stand-up, as you know, right? Like watching a stand-up special on Netflix is great, but being in the room when that comic is on stage and you're watching them, it's such a totally different feeling because there's such an energy. With Zoom, I think it forces you to focus more on the words and like what you're doing because like people are doing who knows. Dude, I did a Zoom show a few weeks ago, right? And there was a guy stapling papers The entire time. He was just stapling. It was a Saturday night. It was 11 p.m. and the guy was not a teacher. I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, this is so weird right now. But like, you don't know. Like, there was a guy taking a nap on a set on a show. Like there's like dogs. Like it's like you have to deal with so much. So I think people are just kind of like doing like 10 things. Like, oh, I heard. So they're more like listening for the structure of the joke and the words. And like, whereas on stage you could get away with like a joke that's not so great structured or so well written, but if you can like act it out, it's funny.
Yeah.
But Zoom, it's like it's more about the writing. I don't know. That's what I've been seeing. But have you had any weird Zoom experiences?
Yeah, I would say early on in like the earlier days, there were comedians that would like they're not like bad people, but they would legitimately like fall asleep in front of like the camera and it would be on, and they're not like bad people, but like it just wasn't. It's one of those things.
You're sitting on your couch, sitting on a blanket. It's like I might as well go to sleep right now.
Right. And I mean that was the main thing, but now I think there's like there's this really active Facebook group called Displaced Comedians, which seems to be this hub of Zoom comics. I think a lot of us are new. There are definitely a good number of seasoned comics, but it's been pretty fulfilling so far. I mean, it's filling the time. Yeah.
And it's about the community, because there's the comics that are going to be like, hey man, I saw you did this joke. What if you add this to it? Like, should say it like this. And you're like, oh, okay. And then like now a joke works like perfectly. So that's cool, bro. I think in a way it's helping out, like connect the entire, like all the comics around the country, which is kind of cool.
Definitely. Yeah. But stapling papers on a Saturday night, like that's like next level. Like,
I was like, are you like, what are you, teacher? And he just like, no. I'm not gonna stop talking to this guy because this is gonna get strange really quick. Like, what are you doing? Or do you hate me so much that you're like, let me staple some papers and make the most noise I can make for this guy?
Right. Definitely. Well, yeah. So the last couple of things, I've got to catch up a little bit with the No More Tokens podcast. How's that going?
It's going good, man. Again, Zoom kind of changed things for us. Listeners, I got a podcast I host called No More Tokens. Basically, it's about diversity in Hollywood. We talk about inclusion, diversity, interview a lot of writers, producers, anybody that's involved in entertainment. We talk about their struggle, like what they had to do to get involved in entertainment. It's been fun. We've been getting more guests that are able to do it just because it's like everyone's at home right now.
Oh, okay, right.
Do it over Zoom, kind of like what you're doing with yours. And it's like, it's easy. Everyone's at home. You don't have to travel. Like, it's nice to have the in-person. Like, it's nice to have that. It's a different level of things, but it's been good, man. We're finishing up the season 2. We have like 2 more interviews that we have. We've got like 6 interviews that we've recorded that we just fallen behind on editing. But we're going to put all those out. Put those out, and then we got some really great guests coming in next season. We have some showrunners of some animated shows and like things like that. So it's a lot of fun, man. It's cool to hear other people's stories and just kind of like it keeps you motivated, especially when you're stuck at home. It's like, oh, okay, it's doable. Like this business, it's doable. Like you can be successful in this. It's just figuring out what that means to each person and how to do it. It's the hard part.
Definitely. And yeah, the birth of my podcast was during this pandemic. And I think that somehow I think the simplicity of like Zoom and knowing that there shouldn't be an option of like having the guest physically present, that like simplified kind of the start. And it's a way for me to kind of get comfortable with like YouTube and video editing and whatnot. So
that's cool, man. And honestly, you'll feel like, cause every time you do it, you're talking, but it's like, you'll just get used to talking for like a half an hour at a time or an hour at a time. And then like, you'll start noticing like, I think it's going to help out the stand-up too, just doing the long amount of time. Cause it's like, what do I talk about now? Like, what the hell, like, it's like, it just helps a little bit, but
right. Definitely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Mahesh. Any last kind of words of wisdom or anything?
No, man. I mean, listen, if you want to do it, if you're thinking about doing it, that's what I tell everyone, just do it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fun, and just stick with it. I think the people that you're meeting along the way it's funny because a lot of my friends that have gotten TV shows or writing gigs on shows and things like that, they've gotten it because through their friends that they know that they started with. Because the people that you're around, like those are the people that are going to help you out more than any manager or any agent or anything like that. So just maintaining relationships and just have fun with it is all I can say. And it's like, it's cool, man, because it is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of it's a tough industry, but it's doable.
Okay, got it. Definitely. Yeah, for me, I think the just do it part, the kind of taking it from imagining it in my head to actually diving in and doing it. That's kind of the biggest takeaway I've had, and just
hey,
everything.
You're doing it, man. You're doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's cool, dude.
Well, awesome. I will keep all of Mahesh Kotagi's social media information and the No More Tokens podcast info in the caption. And Mahesh, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Definitely.